But to me, here really is the kicker that's really tough for me to understand.
Yeah.
How is it, speaking now, right? How is it that the Islamic civilization, which I do believe exists, Muslims around the world, how can we integrate? Because look, I think Islam, it's already the story of what they call the Rene Descartes is in the Quran. The Quran does describe a figure who is basically Rene Descartes. And this figure
Yeah.
is Iblis. So, Iblis, if I'm pronouncing correctly,
Iblis?
Iblis, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I'm an American. But
Don't worry.
he was commanded by God completely arbitrarily, defying any human conceivable reason, bow before Adam.
Yeah.
Iblis is a rationalist. He's just a rationalist. He went, wait, if I use my reason, right? Fire is higher than clay. I am a jinn. The jinn are higher than man on the spiritual hierarchy. We are more spiritual. We're more heavenly. Why the hell would I bow before Adam? Right?
Yeah.
Iblis basically was a Cartesian because for him, he said, I think, therefore I am. The whole of being, the whole of divine being, so far as Iblis was concerned, was reducible to the extent to which he could think about it and to which he could therefore rationalize it, right? Iblis committed the error because he did not unconditionally obey the command of God and therefore give himself to the true material antecedents before him, is what I like to call it. The true material being already set before him, which does not obey the terms of his thinking and his own rationality. Iblis made the arrogant assumption that he knows the essence of God. That he knows this. Hold on, but Descartes did the same thing, right? But is it not that this Cartesian gesture was responsible for the greatness or the revolution, so to speak, that is Western modernity, that has changed the modern world? So how can Muslims come to peace with this apocalypse of modernity without falling into the fundamental arrogance of Iblis? Do we not require this pressure coming from the West or coming from America that really is testing, that's going to test our boundaries and force us to respond to this dialectic of, like the Cartesian demon, so to speak, this devil's advocate of what if everything we know is wrong? This, force of kind of nihilism. Do we need that to wake us up and shock us into the modern world? Or is there a way we can distill the wisdom of the Western modernity and somehow discover it within Islam? That's really my struggle and my personal biggest issue.
That's really fascinating, right? Because the question of Iblis bowing to Adam is one of the greatest theological arguments of all Islamic history. Now, I would like to make a point. Iblis is the Cartesian subject beholding the eternal material, right? And because if you read the Quran, for example, it's written that Adam and Jesus and Moses and all man were already a pre-existing essence. Did you know that? They were already a pre-existing essence.
I heard from Islamic philosophy the idea that Muhammad, he said, I was already a prophet when Adam was between water and clay. You heard this expression?
I have heard it. And by the way, if you want to correspond that to some Christian literature, in John it's written, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. So the idea that both of these quotations are expressing is there's this eternal material substance that's existed since the beginning. Okay, it's just pure reality. It's just pure existence. It's just pure essence, right?
Pure essence, yeah.
Iblis is this Cartesian self. He's a Cartesian subject beholding this eternal, essential, what is essence. And so he rejects it because well, he thinks that his own comprehension, his own mind, possesses some sort of superiority to it. Now, of course, that's sort of a Western arrogance. I think you would agree with me.
Of course.
But I think the interesting point to make here is that ultimately Iblis directly leads to the development of the prophets. So when you're saying, hey, do we need this westernizing force to wake up Islam? Yes, we do. I'll give you an example from this hadith. This very, very interesting hadith. Maybe you should search it up. It's fascinating, all right? Moses is met by the angel of death, all right? The angel of death comes to Moses and says, Musa. He says, oh, yeah, Musa, you must die. Your time to die has come. We have decided that now is your time to die. Moses does not give him a response. Moses does not speak back to him. Moses punches him in the face, pushing him outside of corporeal reality. When the angel of death, who is just punched in the face, goes back to Allah, he says to Allah, excuse me, oh God, your heavenly messenger punched me in the face. He denied my demand for his death. And God says, well, Moses is just purely living, right? So we will not kill him. His time has not come because Moses' existence still is and still will be. So the point I'm trying to make here
That
is,
is that is absolutely fascinating. I have never heard that story before.
yeah, you
That is
should.
absolutely something else. I did not know that.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? If you,
Yes, it's that I did not know that. I didn't. So Islam really does account for this kind of threshold of human contingency.
yes, exactly, of course, because we, the humans, are not simply these. The idea here is that we have this pure existence, and it doesn't matter really what the subject begs of us. Okay, the angel of death begs of Moses to die, but Moses' pure existence does not die, right? He exists. He exists purely as this effect of pure reality, weighs down harder on what should be, or what is demanded of, or what we ought to do, or what we think to do. Just the pure existence of Moses living triumphs over the
The
demand.
limited sense of kind of like divine necessity or divine will. That
Exactly, exactly. And really, if you read it more, God's divine manifestation is never a suggestion, right? This is an example of the Western perversion. And I agree with you that the West will wake up the East in the same way the Moses was woken up by the angel of death and punched him in the face. Because the West will demand of us what they impose upon us, will demand of us what they impose upon us from their ideal forms. And this will wake us up to just the pure, present, material truth. If that makes any sense.
no, it makes sense to me. It really does make sense to me. I have to ask you, what background are you coming from? Like intellectually, are you just kind
Uh,
of a independent thinker, or is there a school
what?
you're associated with, or anything like that?
Oh, in terms of Islam?
Oh,
Okay,
no, no, no,
so,
just in general, like maybe philosophy or.
oh yeah. Yeah, I generally enjoy continental philosophy.
Hmm.
I don't call myself an expert or anything, but I enjoy continental philosophy. I
Yeah,
like Lacan, I like Zizek, I like Heidegger. I like Hegel a lot.
me too. Yeah, me too. These thinkers are the ones who have helped me really rediscover Islam when I completely, discarded and abandoned.
No,
They're the ones who kind of led me right back to having a new appreciation.
No, I 100% agree with you. When I read Hegel and Heidegger, and I still have to read a lot of Heidegger, by the way. I still have to read a lot of Heidegger.
Oh,
Um,
I think the consensus that I know from the Muslim world is that Heidegger is like our guy. Like I know he was a Nazi and all that bad stuff, but in a way that he didn't know, like he himself was too stupid to understand, like he is the key to bridging the West and the East.
and
What's so sad is to me, it's like almost every conversation I have and every debate I have is completely useless to me. Like I just don't I'm not there. I don't feel like this has any pressing significance or meaning, or it's just bullshit, right? When I talk to you, I really do feel like I'm actually having a conversation that matters. Where like I'm actually talking about something I'm really interested in.
yeah,
Like
thanks.
that
I
I
appreciate.
think is like not resolved, or we really are here and we're trying to think about this and resolve this issue. Whereas like I think when I argue with other people, or talk to other people, sometimes it's like, yeah, but this issue's been resolved, so we're just treading over.
Oh,
It doesn't
listen.
matter. Like, all these Marxists or whatever I talk to, it's like this is not the good stuff. This is not the stuff that like matters. This is not the pressing stuff that's important right now. What I'm interested personally is how can we revive or awaken this inevitable Islamic enlightenment, which is needing to happen.
I'm also fascinated, and by the way, I think it's inevitable. I think it there will eventually be a point where the Eastern forces will be like Moses and just wake up and unleash their unlimited, their prowess, right?
One of the biggest issue I have is most of the Muslims I talk to are not open-minded. You can't talk to them like this because they're very dogmatic and very dismissive, and they can't you can't like
I
add any perspective of nuance to it. They just speak from authority, and that's it. And
oh, and I hate that because if you read the Quran is not a text which actually superimposes upon you moral law.
yeah,
If you,
that's what I said too. I said you're ignoring what makes Islam unique. The reason Islam's a unique religion is it's the only religion which is like that too. It's the only religion that's truly revelatory.
know, Islam, uh, what Islam does, right, is it leaves open its wisdom for the believer. It doesn't tell you, oh, we will force upon you this form, you must just simply conform to this, and everything you do must conform to this single form that we have created for you.
Precisely, yeah. It makes me so sad now because when I started going live, I had this issue of this view of Islam to me for years. But after I went live and I started talking to other Muslims, they almost made me convinced that, oh, maybe I had it confused with something else. I was wrong. When I talk to you, it makes me realize, no, I mean, this sense of Islam that I have had, of what makes it unique and so on, wasn't something I made up or something I like was wrong. It's like you seem to really understand it, where I'm coming from with that.
But wait, I'm coming entirely just from the Quran.
Yeah, yes, that's what I was doing too, but it's like as soon as I started talking to other Muslims, they made me think that I was like fabricating everything, and I was just, I was coming from a completely, perspective outside of Islam, and to me that just, I don't know. It kind of really disillusioned me a lot.
I'm used to that. I'm very used to that. When I speak to usual Muslims, they just roll over. They have
Yeah.
no opinion.
And it's so sad because I came to the conclusion where it's almost like Islam was really all I cared about at a point. Where it's like, yes, Marxism, Leninism, all of these things for me personally. I'm not saying this is for everyone, just for me personally. This is a part of what Islam is, right? It's a different way of expressing the same thing. But ultimately, there's so much beauty and truth and wisdom contained in Islam that to me it became like oxygen. Like without this, I can't even breathe. If I can't remind myself of this, like I'm so fundamentally lost in life. it makes everything come together, and everything makes sense, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I generally favor, I admire Marxist Leninism. I've thought about it a lot. I think it's brilliant, and I think it completely triumphs the idealists, and it completely triumphs over people like Carnap, and those ridiculous Western
Yeah.
analytic philosophers,
Yeah,
you know.
to me, I've always considered Marxism Leninism just a part of the Eastern Enlightenment, right? And Marxism as well is the bridge between the West and the East that started from within the West.
Yeah,
You have to understand the context of Germany as a kind of more peripheral country in relation, but it's about modernity, right? To me, that's what it was always about. But for me, I've also really considered the national significance of Islam, and also understanding Islam in China, understanding Islam in Russia. To me, I've come to the conclusion that a real Muslim, Islam does not prescribe a specific nation, if that makes sense, set apart from the nation. Islam is
yeah,
almost the cherry on top of nations. So to me, Muslims can exist as Chinese people, for example. They're just Chinese people. They're fully Chinese. They're part of the Chinese nation, part of the Chinese civilization, part of the Chinese culture. But they just add Islam on top as a way to kind of fill a hole that's still there, if that makes sense, to make
yeah,
sense of it all, right? As a force
yeah,
of kind of like moral autonomy, if this kind of makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I understand what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And interesting enough,
Like to me,
the
what
Ummah.
something I really love about Islam is like I've always seen it as nationally amorphous. It can be many civilizations and many different nations. And that
Yeah,
Islamic unity does not take the form of like ISIS, Islamic
yeah,
State, where we all just become one big, homogeneous mass. But it
yeah.
really can coexist with the unique wealth of differences between peoples in the world.
Yeah, like, do you know the Ummah? Of course, you know the Islamic Ummah, right?
Yeah.
What, well, what does Ummah mean? Okay, Ummah has a very, very simple meaning. It summates the entire Islamic world. It summates the entire Islamic civilization, every nation, right? Every country that is Islamic. However, the meaning of Ummah is very simple. It just means community. All these nations form an ummah, they just simply form a community. They're not bound to an Islamic nation. They're bound to the ummah, the
Hmm.
community of all Islamic nations, right? And that sort of thinking, by the way, is why I think Islam in the end will develop faster than the West, because the West are completely like hyper Cartesian, like hyper separated from community, right? And Islam, the basis of Islamic tradition, faith, is that all these nations form the ummah, the community, and there's this sort of communal space. You can still be a Chinese citizen. You can still be a proud Chinese citizen. You can still be a proud Iranian citizen, right? You can
Mhm.
still be a proud Pakistani, but you still ultimately come into this form of the ummah.
And to me, this is the kind of more authentic universalism to me than the kind of Western, more false universalism of kind of
Yeah,
imposing one's cultural values upon others and looking down upon others, and this from this arrogant perspective is of superiority. To me, the Islamic unity is a way of having unity through difference rather than at its expense.
yeah. I mean, a good example would be like Western universalism is, imagine at the site of culture there's a king, and the king enforces upon every one of his subjects his opinion of what a day should look like. But Islamic unity, Islamic ummah is the whole community of believers all come together, and they leave out their particularizations. They still follow their particularizations, but they come together for this moment of unity in faith and in tradition. It doesn't atomize them. They don't become hyper individualized. They don't lose their nation. They don't lose their culture. They only gain, right? Whereas in Western universalism, you either conform to this ideal system or to the other. There is no, there is always a negation.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, I don't mean to cut it short. I have to go get dinner, but really I'm really grateful for this conversation because like I said, this is a conversation I actually was planning on cutting the stream way earlier, like a few hours ago, but I genuinely enjoyed this and I thought it was yeah. I wish honestly I wish there was more Muslims like you because I always thought like maybe I was the only Muslim who thought like this. You know, there's no one else who's like maybe maybe I'm just an American guy who's just you know developed the wrong view or wrong ideas. But I really appreciate that you came from a perspective that I could really relate to and understand. You
And,
know.
and I appreciate that you took some time to talk to me. I really like your stuff. I think you're really, really intelligent. And you have crushed every single person in debate that you have ever confronted. So I have a lot of good words to say about you. I'm just glad that we were able to talk.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Oh man, guys, I'm really tired.